Okay, now you should hear me. Yes. Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to my talk. Are all programming languages in English? How many native English speakers do we have here? Literally no one. That's perfect. So you are all in target. That's beautiful. Okay, so as we were saying, I'm Michele. I work as a senior software architect at Nearform. I'm a Google developer expert and a Microsoft MVP. And I work at Nearform. We're a professional services company specialized in Node.js, React, TypeScript, whatever happens in the JavaScript ecosystems. And as always, we are hiring. So if you're interested, I'll be around. But before we start answering the question, are all programming languages in English? We should start with a bit of history of programming languages themselves. So we are in Germany, and we are lucky because the first high-level programming language ever invented has been invented by Konrad Zuse in 1942, 1945 for his PhD thesis, because he discovered that it was too complex to use binary code for writing computer programs, you know. So he invented what is called the plain calcul. And I know I mispronounced this. You will teach me later how to pronounce this correctly. But basically, that is how the plain calcul looked like in late 1940s. And as you can see, even though it's not really implementing any English keyword except for a couple, like and statements, it's pretty messy, isn't it? So we don't want to use that in production today. But apart from that, the first high-level programming language ever implementing the English keywords in such way that you could write programs using English semantics, etc., was Flowmatic in 1945, and has been developed at IBM by Grace Hopper and her team. And it was, again, the first programming language expressing operations using English-like statements. So that was the syntax of Flowmatic. It looks like something we know and we all fear, which is COBOL, right? So COBOL is another programming language invented by IBM. It stands for Common Business Oriented Language. It was invented 2 years later, and the syntax, again, uses English keywords for writing computer programs. So, of course, all the programming languages we are using today are descending from the programming languages we invented in the 1950s and, you know, early days of programming. So that's why I'm starting from there. So going on, the same year COBOL was going live, there was another very popular programming language that it's still used today. Not so much, but it's still used, and it's called Fortran. So Fortran, which stands for Formula Translation, it's a very different programming language for COBOL, has a very different business domain, but again, uses English keywords. Of course, it was born in the US, so it made sense to use English for keywords. So going on, trying to understand and make sense out of programming languages and their history, we have, in 1958, one of my favorite programming languages ever, Lisp. So John McCarthy developed Lisp during these years, and while this is a, again, very messy programming language if you are not into parentheses, the keywords, again, are totally in English. So as you can see, we have defun, which stands for define function. We have, cond, null, append, whatever we want. Gotta be honest, null wasn't invented yet during these years. This is common Lisp. I couldn't find any real code of the original Lisp specification. So talking about who invented null, there was another very, very popular programming language, and it has been fundamental for the IT as we know it today, which is called ALGOL. So ALGOL, which stands for Algorithmical Language, was invented in the same year as Lisp. And it's really important because the people who developed this programming language were very influential in the programming community. In fact, at least 3 people working on every version of many versions of ALGOL won 3 different Turing Awards. These people are Dijkstra, Nicholas Wirth, which we'll also see later, and Peter Knorr. And ALGOL has been such a powerful programming language and such an influential programming language that, of course, all the programming languages descending from ALGOL nowadays uses almost the same keywords or very similar one. It's not just these languages, of course. There were many other important programming languages born during these years, such as APL, which stands for A Programming Language, and It's pretty strange, isn't it? Can you understand what it's written here? We will see later, but it was pretty popular actually. And the reason why it declined is because you needed a Unicode keyboard. And of course, at the time, it was really, really expensive. So the only reason why we are not writing something similar today is because we had to spend serious money into hardware back in the day. But in the same year APL was born, we had another fantastic programming language which changed forever the way we write code today, and it's called Simula. So Simula has been the first object-oriented programming language, and it's a descendant of Algol, and as you can see, the keywords are almost the same. So again, English language for keywords. Then, 1 year later, CPL, and again, the same year, we had BASIC, then B, in 1969. And again, why is it so important to go through all these programming languages, right? Well, it's pretty easy. Actually, CPL, with the B programming language, in 1972, created something unique, the C programming language. Isn't it the perfect programming language? I don't know, but of course, it changed forever the industry. So Unix, Linux, and whatever, they are all thanks to this amazing programming language. And of course, C itself influenced many other languages. So in 1972, we had C. 1985, we had C++, originally born as C with classes. Then in 1995, we had Java, and I'm sorry, word for that. Okay, sorry, little joke. I'm not really into Java. But then in 2000, we had C#, which is a bit better in my opinion. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Microsoft MVP, of course. But of course, as you can see, all the languages descending from C, if you know them, they all support almost the same syntax as Java. Sorry, as C. Oh my God, that was very scary. I'm sorry. So, talking about other programming languages that influenced forever the way we write code today, Lisp, believe it or not, influenced forever the way we write code today. So in 1973, in France, we had the born of ML, which stands for meta language. In 1975, we had Scheme, which is basically a Lisp dialect, which is still very popular today. In 1985, we had Camel, then 1995, Racket, and then Clojure in 2007. And why I'm saying that Lisp was so important. So if you basically remove all the parentheses from Lisp, you end up with having something very similar to OCaml or Haskell or ML languages. And if you're into like Java 10 or the latest versions of C#, if you're into JavaScript like I am, you can clearly see the influence of functional programming languages in modern development. So Lisp has been and will always be a unique source of new stuff to add to new programming languages and multi-paradigm programming languages. Talking about Algol, we had Simula again in 1972, then Pascal in 1985, and Delphi in 1995. So as you can see, of course, again, all the programming languages descending from Algol basically use the same keywords. But now we was focusing on American first programming languages, right? Almost all the languages we've seen, not everyone, but almost were born in the US. So it almost, I can take it for granted that they were using English keywords. So let's see if we have any programming languages that was born outside the US, right? Well, it might be surprising, but object-oriented programming has born in Norway. Actually, in 1972, has been invented by I can't pronounce this, I'm sorry. Ole Johan Dahl and Christian Nygaard, and they were Norwegian software engineers and developed object-oriented programming as we know it today. And Pascal, again, Nicholas Wirth invented Pascal after his work on Algol, and it was a Swiss computer engineer, so he developed this while in Switzerland. And we all know Python, right? Python is so popular and was born in the Netherlands in 1991 by Guido van Rossum, and Ruby, which is probably one of the best programming languages ever implemented. I'm not talking about performances. I see someone smiling. We can discuss this later. But on the semantics and syntactical level, I love it a lot, and was invented in Japan, and then Elixir in Brazil by José Valim in 2003. The ML languages has been developed mainly in France, except for Haskell, which has been developed all around the world by a committee. But OCaml, F#, and ReasonML are all languages born mainly in Europe, and except for, again, ReasonML, which was from Facebook in the US. But the ML language family has born in INRIA, so the National Institute for Research and Development of France, in 1985. And if we look at the online historical encyclopedia of programming languages, we can see that we know today about 8,900 programming languages existing, and 2,500 programming languages has been invented in the US, 600 in the UK, 160 in Canada, and 75 in Australia. And of course, these are all countries with the same mother language, which contribute for like almost 35% of all the production of programming languages worldwide. But again, we are concentrating a bit too much on syntax, in my opinion, and keywords. So is there any programming language that doesn't use any keyword at all? You know, because the English language acts on, okay, I see you're smiling, you know what I'm about to talk, yeah? So let's see a couple of symbolic programming languages. Of course, to answer my question, there is and there are programming languages without any keyword at all. And we actually already saw one, like APL. So this is a hello world in APL. It's too easy, so let me show you another program. So this is basically an APL program to generate all the prime numbers from 1 to R. And you're not using any keyword at all, just Unicode symbols. And again, remember that the reason why we are not using these programming languages today is because in the day it was too expensive to afford keyboards. So we must be thankful for that, I guess. But APL evolved a lot, and we today have the K programming language. So this is the exact same program without Unicode symbols, but other symbols we can find on the keyboard, and basically generates all the numbers from 1 to R. And an evolution of K, it's J. And J is quite popular, and this is an example of a quicksort algorithm implemented in J, which is totally crazy, right? Another very it's not a programming language, but can be implemented like in Racket and Lisp with the exact same syntax, is lambda calculus. So the reason why we have functional programming today is thanks to lambda calculus. And lambda calculus only uses basically 3 symbols. Uses the lambda, period, and parentheses. And whatever we use from now on is basically just characters, you know, on the keyboard. But there is also a very important programming language, which is called Prolog, that is not a symbolic programming language, but can be used as a symbolic programming language. So you can basically strip away all the keywords and just use symbols for writing computer program. And now I am going to show you my favorite section of programming languages ever. Because we've seen standard programming languages with keywords, programming languages without keywords, and what if I tell you that you don't even need to type something at a certain point to write programs? So I'm sorry, my earrings are tickling a lot. I'm really sorry about that. So let me introduce you esoteric programming languages. How many of you are familiar with that term? Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Good. Oh, we should definitely talk. I see you're laughing a lot with it. OK, that's cool. So let me show you the first esoteric programming language that I want to show you, which is called brainfuck. And I see people gasping. And OK, if you're gasping, you should start writing in this programming language because it's really, really tricky. It basically uses only 8 symbols to represent a Turing machine. And it's crazy. You can write Turing-complete programs with this programming language, and it's totally insane. But there is also Tune. I think it's pronounced Tune. I have no idea what this code is doing, except for it's maybe an hello word. But it's difficult to find a compiler for those languages, so I'm not really sure. We also have elang, we have integ, we have bifungi. And wait for it, because bifungi, it's a 2-dimensional programming language. So you don't just need to write on the x-axis, but also on the y-axis while writing computer programs. This is totally insane. So this is a number guess game. You should guess a number from 1 to 3. Pretty easy. But that's how you implement such program in bifungi. This is crazy. And when would I typically use any of those programming languages, right? So let me show you, because it's pretty interesting. Is there any one of you into code golf? I have some hope for you. Yeah, you did code golf someday. Okay, I was sure about that. Super cool. So basically, code golf means that you have to create a solution for a given problem in the least charter possible. So like, this is an example. Let's say we have the following input, which is basically an array containing other arrays, and we have to sort all the integers inside the array, maintaining the array nesting, which is crazy. And as you can see, Jelly, which is an esoteric programming language, can do that in 3 charters. Okay, Retina, which is another programming language, can do that in 5, and Vixal can do it in several charters. But as a comparison, there is JavaScript, as you can see here, which is an actual programming language, and it's way more verbose. And as I was anticipating a couple of minutes ago, it's not all about writing symbols, keywords, and whatever, because there are also non-textual programming languages. And this is where I'm going crazy. So the first non-textual programming language that I want to show you, it's called Pete. So you basically feed the compiler with the following image, and you get Pete as an output. You give it the following image, and you get hello world as an output. And of course, it was called Pete to dedicate this programming language to Pete Mondrian, which was a painter. So this is an example of a painting of Pete Mondrian, and I have no idea what is the output for this. So don't try it. I'm not trusting this. The next programming language, it's totally crazy, and it's this one. It's called Whitespace. So you might say, oh, you're kidding me, right? Actually, no. So you only use tab and spaces to create computer programs. And the next one is called Velado, and it's my favorite ever. You basically need a keyboard to execute this program, and the compiler will produce some output. So this is an hello world in Velado. How beautiful is that? This is almost poetic, right? But I know if you're here for this talk, you want to know if there are programming languages using keywords that are not in English, right? And yes, there are. So let me show you. Now that we are in Germany, yeah. So now that we are in Germany, let me show you, how do I pronounce this in German? Tauton? Okay. So it's basically a German Python dialect. You can write it as you write in Python. You literally translate the what's the name? The keywords in German. If you go in France, you have les notes. So you have keywords such as bonjour le monde, hello world, you know, debut, a finch, and etc., etc. If you go in Poland, you have Sako, and is there anyone talking Polish here? No one, because I have no idea how to pronounce that. But it's basically a Fortran implementation using Polish keywords. If you go in like Ukraine, you can use Rapira, which uses Cyrillic for writing code. And if you go in Japan, you might want to use Himawari, which is basically an ML language, I guess, using Japanese keywords. And if you go in Arabia, for example, you might want to use Kalbon. And Kalbon is an Arabic Lisp. So it's written from right to left, like every single Lisp out there. So it's not very different from the Lisps we know today, but it's really interesting to know that we have such possibility, you know. In China, we have APL, which stands for Easy Programming Language, which is not that easy because it's basically a C implementation using Chinese keywords, so where the easy stands. But you know, this is what you do when you go in China and want to write C code. And I have a bonus, and I'm sorry because this is for Italian people only, so only 2 people, I guess, here. But I wrote my own Lisp dialect, which is called Cadrega Lisp. So Cadrega, in my local dialect, means apple. And it's an inside joke that only Italian people can understand, but I'm really sorry about that. But you can find the source code on GitHub. It's written in Haskell. You can fork it and use your own keywords if you want. So you can create your own programming language using your own keywords. This is, again, totally free. Just do it whatever you want. So to answer your question, are all programming languages in English? No. But what would you rather do? You know, writing like in Himawari, writing brainfuck maybe? No, we will stick to English language, right? Even if you are not native English speakers. And that was all for me. Thank you all for being here. I will leave a couple of contacts in case you want to follow me on Twitter. This is where I live most. And I'll be there for answering any of your questions. Thank you.